Hi again, everybody. I got my coffee, I got my lollipop, and you've got your boxing right here on Randy's Ringside. Another edition of Randy's Ringside. Early week, it's Tuesday, and we are coming to you live from Studio M in Huntington, Long Island, New York, named after my esteemed producer, Marcello.
Hey, Randy, can you do me a favor? Can you turn down the volume on your laptop? We're hearing...
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit of slap back there. There you go.
Forgot to kill that.
That's why you got me. That's why you pay me the big bucks, right?
So we're here with you right now. We had video all over the place, and we had audio all over the place. I got my coffee. I got my lollipop. I got my boxing. You got your boxing. From Studio M in Huntington, Long Island, New York. Another edition of Randy's Ringside. Hi again, everybody. Randy G, the commish, along with my esteemed producer, Marcello, joining us tonight.
How you doing tonight, Randy?
Popping on the microphone. He will do anything to just switch on that mic and give you some of his tidbits. But I got to tell you, can you believe how fast this summer is going by?
I cannot believe yesterday was February, so I don't know what the hell's going on.
It was snow on the ground. I saw a picture this morning of me shoveling snow. I said, wait a minute. And here we are so far into the summer that I'm actually starting to think just a few months from now it's going to be cold and I'm going to be getting ready to shovel snow again. But anyway, we've got a lot of viewers in California and Arizona. They don't have any idea what snow is. And I wish our friends in California would get some rain because of the forest fires over there. And, I just heard about this big fire that's burning around Yosemite, and they're trying to stop it from reaching Yosemite. And they said it was started by a spark from a lawnmower. But everybody's lawns are dead. Nothing is growing. Why is anybody turning on a lawnmower? That's my big question. And hopefully they'll get some of the rain that we've had in the New York area, because over the last week we've had plenty, and I wish I could send it California's way. But here we are, end of July, and as July hits its final week, boxing is set to pick up the pace even more with one great fight after another. And over the next month, fans are going to get to see, listen to this, Jake Paul, Danny Garcia, Amanda Serrano, the comebacks of Adrian Broner, Adam Kovnowski, Omar Figueroa, Teofimo Lopez, and Mick Conlan. You want more? Well, we'll see incredibly talented Gary Antoine Russell. I'm actually going to be ringside for his fight this week at the Barclays Center. We're going to see the return of Virgil Ortiz, 18-0 with 18 knockouts. We're going to see heavyweight championship at its very best. Alexander Usyk against the man he took the title from, Anthony Joshua. This one is a rematch. And the man who just may be the world's best featherweight, Emmanuel Navarrete, he's also going to be in action. And we'll get to see the return of perhaps the very best young heavyweight. I'm calling him a featherweight. The guy is 6'4.5", 250 pounds. I'm calling him a featherweight. The young heavyweight, I think he's the champ of the future. His name is Jared Anderson. All of that. So let's go back. I think the first name I mentioned here was Danny Garcia. Now, Danny Garcia is going to be fighting in the main event at the Barclays Center this Saturday night. And he's going up against Jose Benavidez, the older brother of 168-pound number one contender, David Benavidez. David Benavidez is going to be at the Barclays Center. I'll be there ringside with my Sirius XM pal, gentleman Jerry Cooney. Danny Garcia has said that he's moving up. Remember, this is a former 140-pound champion, 147-pound champion. He's been off since about December of 2020 when he lost the decision. He's been off over a year. and he lost to Errol Spence Jr., and I really thought it was over for him that night. He gave no effort whatsoever. He was outboxed over 12 rounds. On my scorecard, I had Errol Spence winning, I think, 11 rounds of the fight. And the only reason I gave one to Danny Garcia, I just didn't want to see him get shut out. And one close round, I gave it to Garcia. But basically, Errol Spence won it all the way. Well, Danny Garcia said, you know what? I just was having trouble making 147. And I get that. And also, he was in against maybe the best welterweight in the world. Yes, the best, because I think I would pick Errol Spence to beat Terrence Crawford. I think most boxing people, they're saying that they wish Errol Spence would win because of the two of them, they can't find any redeeming nice quality about Terrence Crawford. I mean, the guy can fight, no question about it. And it's a fight that, if it ever happens, he just might win. But we're all rooting for Errol Spence, who did beat Danny Garcia. Now Danny has moved up. He's 154 pounds. Main event on Saturday night against Jose Benavidez. Well, we also mentioned Amanda Serrano. Now, Ms. Serrano has been off since she lost to Katie Taylor back in April. Amanda Serrano is going to be back on August 6th at Madison Square Garden. She's going to be fighting in the co-feature to her new promoter, her buddy, the red-hot Jake Paul, the YouTube star, who I guess when he first came on, I had no use for Jake Paul. And now I'm just enjoying him. I enjoy everything about him. You know why? Because he is showing boxing, I think, such respect. He's training as hard can be. He took Amanda Serrano. I don't like what happened there because I thought that promoter Ludabella, was doing a great job with her. But, by latching on with Jake Paul, she has gained so much attention. She was able to fight in that big fight against Katie Taylor. And I just wish we'd see a rematch. But I'm starting to think now that was one and done back in April. Amanda's going to move on. And I think Katie Taylor is going to move on as well. Adrian Broner is going to be coming back. Yeah, the problem. It's been a few years for Adrian Broner. He won a decision a couple of years ago. He keeps ending layoffs. He comes back. He lays off, comes back. And he's going to be fighting Omar Figueroa. Omar Figueroa, the former lightweight champ of the world. I was wondering what happened to him. And just recently at a press conference, he announced that he was having mental problems, that he couldn't concentrate on training. He couldn't concentrate in the ring. He found himself just losing all concentration. And when he did, his defense went out the window and he started getting busted up. His last fight, he looked absolutely terrible. And he got stopped, and I thought that he really should pack it in. I'm not sure what these mental problems, if they're going to make him a better fighter or not, but he says he's over them, and you're going to see the guy who used to throw about 100 punches around. If he can do that against the more or less light-hitting Adrian Broner, you got yourself one heck of a fight. Let me see if I can, you guys are jumping aboard here. So, see if we can give you any of our special shout-outs.
So far, not a lot of chatter right now, Commish.
I think everybody is watching the Met-Yankee game.
Uh-oh.
I get that. Right now, it's 5-2 New York Mets. And, the great thing about doing Randy's Ringside is that when we do these shows, as soon as it's done, whether it's a 10-minute show, 20-minute show, or whatever, we just repost it, and then people watch when we're done. But I'm just thrilled with the way boxing is going. And, of course, the big fight this summer is going to be August 20th. It's going to be a pay-per-view event, heavyweight championship of the world between Alexander Usyk and the man he took the title from, Anthony Joshua. Now, Joshua has been preparing very hard for this fight. And Usyk, he hadn't been preparing until about 6 weeks ago. And of course, he comes from Ukraine. And he took to the front lines to defend his country. And his president, Zelensky, pleaded with him, we need you more. Getting out there, spreading the word about Ukraine, that we need the world's help. And you could do it with your platform as heavyweight champion of the world. And he heard his president. And knowing Usyk, he wants to stay there because he's got family, friends, colleagues who are losing their lives in this horrific war that the nutjob Vladimir Putin is waging on them. So he got back into the gym, and they say he is training with a vengeance they have never seen before in Alexander Usyk, who most people know as just a pure, beautiful boxer. But now he's sitting down at his punches. He's going for the knockouts. And he is blasting his sparring partners, just sending them home. And nobody's ever seen Usyk do that before. And the thing about Joshua is going to be heavier. He is going to be bigger. But when you think of Usyk, a lot of times boxing people will say, oh, Usyk, isn't he that blown up cruiserweight? No, he grew into a heavyweight. He is not a small heavyweight by any stretch of the imagination. When you think of Muhammad Ali, you don't think of a small heavyweight. Muhammad Ali stood around 6'4", and in his prime, he went about 215 pounds. Alexander Usyk is about 6'4", and he's coming in about 225 pounds. With a great set of legs, he's a southpaw, gives everybody problems. So he is not a small heavyweight, not by any stretch of the imagination. The thing is, these guys today are so big. Anthony Joshua is around 6'6". Deontay Wilder is 6'7". Tyson Fury is around 6'9". These guys, Daniel Dubois, who now owns a trinket WBA title. Daniel Dubois is about 6, maybe 6'6". And guys like Efe Ajagba, about 6'6". So many of them just are so big today that you look at a guy who might be about 6'4", like Usyk, and you think of him as a small heavyweight. And it's funny, if he's small, every time people talk about Evander Holyfield, he's looked at it basically as a tiny heavyweight. Well, once again, 6'2", 2.5 is not small. Think of former heavyweight champion from the 1960s, Sonny Liston. When you think of Sonny Liston, you think of a man about 17 feet tall and who weighed about the weight of a dinosaur. Sonny Liston was the size of Evander Holyfield, who is looked at as a small heavyweight. It's just that the guys today are so much bigger. But being bigger doesn't mean you're necessarily the very, very best. And I do think we saw that when Usyk fought Joshua the first time and won a decision over him. And now Joshua says he's completely prepared for the rematch. But yet he says different things. When that August 20th rematch happens, he said, I'm going right after him. I'm going to pressure him. And I'm just going to force him to fight. And then he says, I'm going to show him how smart I am. I'm going to box. I'm going to keep him coming to me. So I'm not sure what the plan is for Anthony Joshua. Some people say, is he trying just to mix Usyk up? Or is Anthony Joshua the one who's really mixed up? And he's not sure what he's going to do. All I know, that when Usyk fought him the first time, Usyk boxed him from the outside and he outfought him on the inside. And Joshua only had plan A. There was no plan B whatsoever in his repertoire. I am sure that Usyk not only has plan A and plan B, I am sure he's even got a plan C. That if his boxing isn't working and maybe going in and out is not working, he'll come up with something else. I think he's a very smart fighter. And just because of the cause that he is fighting for, that it means so much to his country for him to win this big fight, which is going to be taking place again on August 20th in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. I'm rooting. And I think much of us in the boxing world, not because we dislike Anthony Joshua, he's a very likable athlete, but it's just that our hearts go out to Alexander Usyk, and we'd like to see him win this tremendously big fight. So when you think about so many of the fights that have taken place this over the next month, and all this is going to be happening over the next month. We talked about Danny Garcia this weekend. On the undercard is Gary Russell Jr. Let me tell you something. Gary Russell Jr., who is one of the brothers of Gary Russell. Gary Russell Jr. He was the former featherweight champion. He is going to be in the corner of his brother, Gary Antoine Russell. That's the one I'm going to be seeing fight. And he's fighting the veteran 27-1-1 Rancis Barthélemy. Gary Antoine Russell is 15-0. He's a 140-pounder. He is 15-0. And I think that Gary Antoine Russell may be the best 140-pounder in the world. 15-0, 15 knockouts. Can he knock out the tremendously talented Rancis Barthélemy? I don't know, but it's going to be fun to watch that fight this Saturday from the Barclays Center. And working his corner is his new trainer, his brother, who I mentioned before, Gary Russell Jr., who I don't think we're going to see fight anymore. He lost his featherweight championship last January to a Filipino by the name of Mark Moxeo. And in the fight, Gary Russell tore a shoulder. He needed surgery. And even in a good year, when he wasn't hurt, Gary Russell fought once a year. And I think that really did it for him. I think since 2015, he has only fought once per year, even though he was champion. His only loss in his career before the Moxeo fight was against Vasily Lomachenko in about his 14th fight or so, on decision. He always wanted to get that fight back again, but Lomachenko had no need for him. He just kept moving up and fighting, winning the featherweight championship, winning the 130-pound title, winning the 135-pound title. And by the way, Lomachenko is going to be making a comeback. It looks like sometime in November. He, too, comes from Ukraine. He is one of the best friends of Alexander Usyk. And he, too, has heard the words of his president of his country, Zelensky, pleading with him to get back in action because Ukraine really needs these guys front and center, singing the praises of Ukraine and pleading everybody for their help.
Hey, Commish, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I just want to ask you, what do you think? Do you think when you have somebody in your corner, your trainer or anything, is family, do you think that makes a difference in your training? Do you think that's good, better to have, a family member in your corner training you, being your corner man? Or do you think it's better to have somebody that, not related to you, somebody more, I guess, detached to you? That was just something I've always wondered about. Does it get too personal?
I don't think it really matters in many, many cases. I think it actually helps. Look, with Vasily Lomachenko, he's trained by his dad. Nobody knows the great Lomachenko like his dad. There have been other fighters where having them in the corner. Years ago, there was a light heavyweight. He went on to win the world title. He fought under the name of Mike Rossman. He took his mother's maiden name. His father was Jimmy DiPiano. He was Mike DiPiano. And I thought that Jimmy DiPiano did a terrible job in the corner. I don't think he helped his son at all. And there have been many guys who have worked with their son who don't work out. Look, the great Wilfred Benitez was trained and guided by his father, who all he really wanted was to take his son's check and then run down to Puerto Rico. When they got home, he'd spend every penny at the dog track. But Wilfred always seemed to do much better and was much more comfortable without his father. But I think in this case, with all the Russells, Gary Russell Jr., Gary Antoine Russell, Gary Antonio Russell, the unbeaten bantamweight, who's something like 18-0. All of them were trained by their father, Gary Russell Sr., who recently passed away suddenly. And when he passed away, he was the trainer, the manager, the advisor to all of his sons by the name of Gary Russell. And it really affected them. And the one guy they looked up to was their older brother, the featherweight champion, Gary Russell Jr., who, despite all of his talent, I really don't think he wanted to be in the ring that much. And I think he's going to be an incredible trainer. And I think we're going to see it for the first time on Saturday night.
And my other question to you, and this goes back to the Joshua Usyk fight. Mm-hmm. They're fighting in Saudi Arabia. What does the climate? I know there have been a lot of really big famous championship fights in Africa. And what does the climate do to the fighter when they're in that kind of environment in the ring for, these long rounds, 12 rounds? However, how does the climate affect, performance when you're in, that kind of you're basically in the desert, What are these guys, what do you think, what do they do to their training regimen to prepare themselves for this? Because obviously they're not fighting, they're going to be training down there. They're not going to be just showing up for the fight. What in your experience do they do to kind of prepare for, acclimatizing themselves to an environment like Saudi Arabia?
Great question, because when you get in it, and I don't know if the stadium they're going to be fighting in is going to be an enclosed stadium. But if you talk about the elements, let's just go back to somebody that I'm so familiar with, my broadcast partner at SiriusXM. Back in June of 1982, he fought Larry Holmes in an outdoor stadium. It was behind Caesar's Palace. It was in the parking lot of Caesar's Palace. And they just erected the ring. They put up a canopy over the ring just in case it would be a rainstorm. And the television lights were there, baking down. And we at Ringside, it was about 90 some odd degrees at Ringside when the fight started. But we had a thermometer in the ring, and with those television lights in the ring, it was over 125 degrees. And there's not much you can do to prepare yourself for a long fight in brutal heat like that. And Jerry's inexperience, because he only came into the fight with less than 2 rounds of action in the previous 2 years, and the heat and the greatness of Larry Holmes all piled up to beat Jerry Cooney that night. Larry Holmes was that night might have been the greatest heavyweight who ever lived. And he was used to fighting in Vegas. He was used to fighting in the heat. So he was able to just suck it up. He got used to it. Jerry, between, again, the inactivity, that he really needed work, the fact that he was a real good heavyweight against maybe the best heavyweight in the world, and an experienced heavyweight. And that heat, Jerry just melted. And as a matter of fact, there was a great fight between Sugar Ray Robinson and Joey Maxim for the light heavyweight championship in the 40s. And Sugar Ray Robinson, in the heat, which was around over 100 degrees in the ring, Sugar Ray Robinson wilted where he could basically no longer stand up late in the fight, and they stopped the fight. So that heat could really play a difference in the fight, but I do believe that Usyk and Joshua is going to be in an indoor arena in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. But great question.
I've always just been curious about that because it's such a drastic climate change, and you're already pushing your body to the limit. So, dehydration, all those factors come into play. I mean, the conditioning must be amazing that they have to put themselves through.
Oh, yeah. And there's no question about it. Anthony Joshua has been in the gym more or less for months. You're going to be amazed. I think he's going to step into the ring on August 20th wearing a body unlike any body has ever seen step into the ring. He's just heavily muscled, which could actually hurt him in a long fight because those long muscles tend to fatigue faster than, let's say, a runner's body. And Alexander Usyk is not heavily muscled, and he is more or less a mover. That's why I think if there's any kind of heat, that it's going to favor Alexander Usyk. A big shout out here to Don McGuire. Thank you so much for having us on your show last week. It was just tremendous. Me and Bill Clancy, Jack Reese. It was just a tremendous show. And Don McGuire, you just do a tremendous job. A real asset to the sport of boxing. Paul Driscoll from Toronto, Canada, jumping aboard, who was in his glory the other day because up in that Toronto area, WBC President Mauricio Suleiman was there. And he got to hang out. Paul Driscoll got to hang out for a while with the very affable, friendly Mauricio Suleiman. Got some great pictures. Paul, I loved it. So I'm glad that you had a great time. Paul Driscoll also happens to be the biggest, the number one fan of the great Larry Holmes. We got Joseph Bergman watching us over here. Thank you, Joseph. Grab my lollipop here. And then, you know what? Let's just check the Mets score. Always love doing this. If the Yankees are winning, they're winning. If the Mets are winning, they're winning.
I think it's a good game because not a lot of people are on tonight. So
yeah, let's see if we could do this. Well, it's also going to be tomorrow. New York Mets.
The Mets are leading the Yankees 5-3 at the end of the fourth.
End of the fourth, 5-3. New York Mets. I wonder how the Yankees got that third run because I know in the first inning, Aaron Judge hit another home run. Is he going to hit 60 this year? What do you think, Marcelli? You think he's good for 60? He's got about 34 now, and we're just past the All-Star break.
I think if anybody can do it, he can.
And I love it because he's been drug tested and everything. I would love to see Aaron Judge do it because I still have, in my own mind, I have asterisks next to the names of Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa and Barry Bonds. And those guys, they actually ruined baseball for me for quite a while with all their shenanigans and everything else. And you got to be fair about it. If you're just going to juice up, well, let everybody juice up, and then it's not a real game anymore.
They should have an all-steroids baseball.
There we go.
Baseball federation. So it's just like all guys jacked up on HGH and testosterone and everything like that, and just watch them just run around the bases 6 times and drop dead from heart attacks or whatever. I don't know.
Nice.
They should have an all drug baseball league.
And by the way, by the way, I don't know how we can segue from that into this, but it just kind of reminded me, and I know that as a former wrestler yourself, the news broke that Vince McMahon is stepping down. Your thoughts, but being as nice as you can.
Well, this is the thing. Love him or hate him, you cannot deny that Vince McMahon has done amazing things for professional wrestling. He brought professional wrestling into the mainstream. He made it a household. He made these guys household names. He made it $1 billion business. You cannot deny that Vince McMahon, I mean, he stepped on a lot of people to do what he did to get where he is. He destroyed a lot of lives. He broke a lot of people. But he did bring professional wrestling to a level unheard of in the decades prior. When professional wrestling was just like a fiefdom with all these little different promotions across the country. It was a carnival gimmick. It was not the stuff that you would see on ESPN or in Sports Illustrated. And he turned it into $1 billion a year business. So you got to give him respect for that. But I will say this. If the WWE was not a publicly traded company and was still a privately owned company, none of this would be happening. Vince McMahon would still be in charge, and you wouldn't have heard anything. I'm almost positive that because this is a publicly traded company with board members, with people and stockholders that they have to answer to, that's why a lot of this came out. I think, the guy was late 70s, 77 years old. I think he was
77.
Yeah. I think, it was inevitable that, but Another McMahon is just taking over. So Stephanie McMahon is co-CEO with Khan, and Triple H is back. Hunter is back as creative director, I believe. So and he's not going to be absent. He's not going to just be sitting on a beach somewhere with a Mai Tai drinking with his feet up. He's not going to be doing that. He's obviously going to be involved in some form or another, but not very publicly like he was involved before. And, it's just another, wrestling goes through phases, and this is just another phase of the business, and we'll see what happens. We have competition in the world of, in the world of professional wrestling with AEW now that hasn't been seen since Turner in the 90s. So it's something different. I'm interested to see what's going on, but you will not be hearing the last of Vince McMahon. You will not be hearing the last of him. He's going to be around until he drops dead in the ring.
He really did a lot for the brand. I mean, he did a lot for himself. Look,
absolutely.
We have known that he's worth a lot of money, but just for kicks, I went on to Google and I said, how much is Vince McMahon worth? Then I went on and I said, how much is Oprah Winfrey worth? Now, we all know that Oprah is a TV mogul, and she is one of the wealthiest women in all of TV land.
Absolutely.
One of the wealthiest people in all of television land. And you know what? Oprah, I believe and I just went by Google. There might be other sources, but Google said that Oprah Winfrey was worth $13.5 billion.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah.
It said Vince McMahon was worth $13.4 billion.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you have to realize that not only does Vince, every time Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, makes a movie, Vince McMahon gets a check. Every time, one of these guys makes it big, gets on TV, goes, does movies, does promotions, does licensing and everything like that, Vince McMahon gets a check. He owns a piece of all of these guys' careers that he's helped build. He's got branding, he's got licensing. Anytime you see toys, lunchboxes, T-shirts, everything, the McMahons get a check. Of course, he took, and it's worldwide now. It used to be just the United States. Now they're doing shows in, just like, the championship fight. They're doing shows in Saudi Arabia. They're doing shows in the UK. They've got their own WWE brands in Europe now that are doing shows in Europe. It's a worldwide business, and love him or hate him, you have to respect the fact that he took it to the next level. When professional wrestling was just these little, like I said, it was all these little fiefdoms. It was these little, separate promotions in different parts of the country, and there were these rules where you didn't go to there, you didn't cross, the lines, you traded guys, and he just stepped on everybody, took over television, made it himself, did it himself, and elevated it to a whole new level. So you got to respect that.
Do you think he's still going to, even though he says he's stepping back, do you think he really is? Do you think he can do it? So. I don't.
Like I said, he's not going to be going to the Bahamas, putting his feet up, and settling down. He's obviously still going to be involved, not publicly, but he's still going to be involved in the business. He's still going to be working alongside, providing his info. And I'm almost positive that his daughter and his son-in-law will talk to him and get, consultations from him from things. And he's not going to be gone. Like I said, the WWE is a corporation now. It's got a board of directors, it's got shareholders, it's got stockholders, it's got people it has to answer to. If the WWE was just the McMahon family business, you would have heard nothing. That nothing would have happened. He would have said, he would have made a statement, and that's it, and that was over. But because this is now a publicly traded company, it has to behave. It's got a public image it has to uphold. It's got a public image it's got to show.
During my days as commissioner, I got to spend a lot of time with Vince McMahon because we also regulated wrestling.
Yeah, I remember back then when it was before he changed the business and he made it sports entertainment. It was a sport. When I was in the business, I had to be licensed by the New York State Athletic Commission.
Right.
One day I'll show you my ID card that I still have and it had to be regulated. Any shows we did, there had to be representatives there. But when he changed it and he changed the spirit of the business and turned it into sports entertainment, that all went out the window.
Everything he did and every one of his shows, which was on television, he was the executive producer, and he took a hand in every one of those shows. And he would tell the cameraman, director, and producer and everything where the shots are going to go and where they're not going to go. Let's say there was an arena. Let's say Madison Square Garden, which holds 20,000. Let's say they weren't going to be sold out, that they were only going to have maybe 18,000 people, and a certain area was not going to have any seats sold. There were going to be 2,000 empty seats over there. Well, McMahon knew that and told the producer and director in no uncertain terms, you are not to show that area. The only thing you are to show is the filled seats. And I worked one show as an announcer. In 1988, I had just become commissioner in New York, and I got a call from Vince McMahon. He said he's putting on a boxing show, in Las Vegas, and he wanted me to be the color commentator to work alongside Sam Rosen of the Madison Square Garden Network, who's still with the network. He does the New York Rangers. And I believe he's in several Halls of Fame, including, I think, the Hockey Hall of Fame. So Sam and I were at the production meeting with Vince McMahon, and there were about 15 to 20 all the camera people, the lighting people, the sound people, the cameramen, everybody was there. And while McMahon was talking, somebody leaned over and just whispered something to the person next to them. It didn't disrupt anybody. It just was very discreet, and they leaned over and said something. Well, McMahon happened to see them do that. He stopped, and he looked at them, and he said, if you have something to say, share it with all of us. And I mean, everybody kind of just froze. And he said, do you have something to share? Then you're watching me, and you're listening to me. He was upset. But that's how he did it, every single production meeting, and that's how he ruled the WWE.
And he ruled the business for 40 years. He's ruled the world of professional wrestling. And, I don't know what it is when individuals become rich, obscenely rich. They start to forget that they have to actually, behave like human beings and start doing crazy stuff. I don't know if that's the money or whatever, but like I said, you can't deny what he has done for professional wrestling. You can't, as much as, I don't think he's personally a decent human being. I think he's ruined a lot of people's lives. He's done very questionable things. He's ruined the health of so many of people I've come to know in the business, and friends of mine who made it as far as the WWE. And, but it's like one of those things. It's like Michael Jackson. Everything that you know about Michael Jackson, and when you listen to his music, you still can't deny that he was an incredible artist. He was an incredible musician and an artist, even with everything that he was terrible accused of doing. You can't deny that he was. How do you reconcile that? And the way you reconcile that is you acknowledge the fact that he was this type of a person. And that's the same thing with McMahon. You can say that, he was, the innovator of professional wrestling and the father of the modern professional wrestling, while acknowledging the fact that he was a pretty bad human being.
Well, that's Vince McMahon, who earlier this week, or a few days ago, just announced he was stepping down. And again, Marcello and I don't think that he's going to be stepping down. Most people don't. No. He's just not going to be out there front and center. But I guarantee you, everybody around him will still be hearing from Vince McMahon. Yeah. Getting back to boxing.
Yeah, let's get back to boxing, Randy.
Get back to boxing. There is a young man who is making a lot of waves, and I really want to. I could end it on this thought with his name is Ryan Garcia. King Ryan Garcia. He is a lightweight. He's undefeated. And back in January of 2021, he won a fight against Luke Campbell. He got knocked down in the second round, picked himself up, and then proceeded to beat up on Luke Campbell and stopped him in about the seventh round. But after the fight, Ryan Garcia said he was having mental issues, that he had spent too much time in boxing. He was only about 22 years old, and he needed time away from the sport. And he left. Nobody heard from Ryan Garcia. But then later in the year, after being off about 6-7 months, he started resurfacing on social media and started more or less bashing some of the other lightweights out there. And when he did that, you just knew that he was starting to miss it, and he said he was going to come back. And then finally, earlier this year, I believe it was in May, he came back after about 15 months away, and he won a 12-round decision against a very tough fighter by the name of Emmanuel Tagoe. And at the same time, he had been with Team Canelo Alvarez, the face of boxing, Team Canelo. And his trainer, Eddie Reynoso, was also working with him. But the thing is, and we're drinking water over here, and we love it. Eating our lollipops and everything. He was drinking away, and actually, he wasn't drinking away. I'm drinking away. He was just in a different place, and he couldn't deal with being with Team Canelo because he's got such an ego. And he left, and he went with Joe Goosen, trained with Joe Goosen for a few more weeks, came back with a very big victory only a couple of weeks ago over Javier Fortuna. After the fight, he told us two things. One, we expected that he was calling out Gervonta Davis, the unbeaten lightweight champion, calling him out. But he also said, I can't make 135 anymore. I'm fighting at 140. I have a feeling that he can fight either at 135, 140. If Gervonta Davis wants to fight him at 135, you know that Ryan Garcia will be at 135. But Ryan Garcia now rapidly becoming the face of boxing. Let's see who he's going to fight next. Will it be Gervonta Davis? I doubt it. I really doubt it. I think Ryan Garcia needs maybe one more fight. And we're not talking a one-round fight where he knocks somebody out in the first round. He needs a fight where he's going to go 3, 4, 5 hard rounds, and then he can take on Gervonta Davis. Let's see anybody else jumping aboard on this Met-Yankee night when even the non-sports fans, this is one of those events that's just, it transcends the worlds of sports. Whenever you get the Subway Series between the Yankees and the Mets. I'll take a look at your posts in just a little while. We are going to repost this. We're going to put it back up, and you can enjoy it later as we talk about everything from boxing to professional wrestling. Vince McMahon. I want to tell you that on SiriusXM, we have a great wrestling show. It's on Monday through Saturday from 9 in the morning until noon Eastern Time. It's called Busted Open with Dave LaGreca and Bully Ray. Don't miss it. Busted Open, 9 to noon on channel 156 on SiriusXM. Busted Open. For my man Marcello, I'm going to be back here. I'm going to be back tomorrow on Randy's Ringside on Facebook Live at 8:30. I want to remind you that on Friday on SiriusXM, we got Gilberto Ramirez going to be joining us. He's 44-0. And he's going to be facing Dimitri Bivol for the light heavyweight championship. And then I believe the winner will be getting a shot at Canelo Alvarez. Remember, Bivol already beat him. Canelo wants him back again. I think he's going to have to wait until the Bivol-Ramirez fight. And, of course, Bivol unbeaten in about 20 fights. And Gilberto Ramirez, 44-0, has all the markings of the fight of the year. But that one's going to take place early next year. But Gilberto Ramirez is going to be joining me and Jerry Cooney on Friday at the fights. Also joining me this Friday is going to be two-time Olympic champion, undefeated professional champion. She has won titles at 168, 160, and 154. The greatest woman of all time, she calls herself the GWOAT. Clarissa Shields will be with me and Jerry on Friday. It's a show you don't want to miss. SiriusXM's At the Fights from noon until 2 p.m. Eastern Time, channel 156. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great rest of the night. Had a great time here in Studio M. Be back tomorrow from Studio A. Have a great night. Be safe.